A huge week in WWE. We're joined once again for the first time in over a month. Brandon Clements is back on the program. Heal the Face podcast via Skype is coming on right now.
So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heal the Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heal to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
All right, so not from Armory Square, but for the first time in over a month, back with Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. You can find him on Twitter at Icebreaker21. We are on the air with the Heal to the Face podcast. You can find me on social media at KRock Jared, and most importantly, the program at Heal to the Face. We're on Spotify, at iHeartRadio. If you follow us on Twitter, I make sure to put out the links for all of those every single week. A very big week in the world of WWE. I mean, there was a really awesome AEW championship match last night between Jon Moxley and Jake Hager, formerly of WWE's Jack Swagger. But we're going to start things off, and obviously the one place that things probably need to be started off. So important that Jon Moxley's even commenting on himself. It's WWE. Before we get to the Fink, because today was the day that he passed as of recording, Brandon, though, we'll talk about some of the releases in WWE. What do you make of some of the names? What do you make about this whole thing in general?
I think it's poor timing. I think it's awful with the coronavirus, everything that's going on there. I think it's awful. I mean, here's the thing. I was reading reports that WWE has $500 million in reserves, and they're letting go of guys like Heath Slater, Mike Chioda, who's been in the business since 1989. He's been around in WWE since I've been around. I'm 31, or I'll be 31 this year, and you know, and then Rusev, we kind of figured he was gone. Revival's, you know, they're gone now as well. I don't understand it. You're keeping these part-time guys around. You got guys like Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. I know you love Brock, but they're accounting for a lot of money. Cain Velasquez as well, and Bobby Lashley, just to name another one. If you put some of those salaries away and get rid of them, you got $30-40 million that you could spend on keeping guys like Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, which was kind of weird because they were prominent in that they had a good part in that scene, the match scene with AJ Styles and Undertaker, and now within a week and a half they're gone. Like, it makes no sense to me. I mean, what are your thoughts on the releases? I just think it's crazy.
Well, you know, I think right now WWE, and I've said this a bunch of times, should just be on pause. But as for the releases, I guess it is a more unique situation because they always do the releases every single year in the spring and in the fall. But I guess with these releases, it's really unique because a lot of times these guys didn't really have a chance to show themselves because of this current situation. It's not, you know, one of the typical situations where they gave them a shot at WrestleMania and then things just didn't pan out. A lot of these guys are off television just because they can't have them on television, so it's not like they can really earn their way. There's really not much that Zack Ryders or the Rusevs can really do. And I think the big loss here is definitely like a Rusev, because that just adds to the list of yet another storyline that we never got to see the completion of, him and Bobby Lashley. And it breaks up the relationships. How about the relationships broken up here? You got Chelsea Green still in NXT. Now Zack Ryder out in WWE. You have Rusev, obviously Lana still in WWE. I mean, you kind of have a relationship in the sense of Mike Rotundo, formerly IRS. His son is in the company, so one's working and one's not. So I think that's kind of the unique aspect, is that they broke up a few of the couples here.
Forgot one. The Viking Raiders. I think it's Eric. Eric's wife is Sarah Logan as well.
Oh, I mean, wasn't Sarah Logan, though, released yesterday as well, though?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was on the list.
Yeah, okay, so the Viking Raiders not released. Yes. Gotcha.
I'm sorry. Viking Raiders are good, yes.
Viking Raiders in, Sarah Logan not. But it's another couple they broke up, and in the last couple of years, WWE has been doing their part to kind of keep couples together, but not in this case. Both Canalises were released from this one, though, Mike and Maria Canales. But again, it's hard in the sense of when's the last time we saw either of those guys on television? I think, they're both good talents, but the problem with both of Mike and Maria Canales for the last couple of years is, I mean, they've been really floundering, if doing anything in WWE. I mean, I could understand that release.
Yeah, I understand it too. I think it's good for their careers too. Go back to Ring of Honor. Go somewhere else, because obviously it's not working. In WWE, which it doesn't always work that way. Maybe AEW. I mean, everybody that's getting released, you're thinking, okay, AEW. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the case. I think some of those guys and gals are going to go on the independent circuit and make some money that way. And you might see some go to New Japan for all we know. I don't think every one of those people are going to AEW. I don't see that. I think every time you see
especially the circumstances we're in now, a lot of people say, their release will just go somewhere else. But AEW, New Japan, everyone's in the same boat. Nobody's wanting to take on talent right now. I mean, everyone's on pause.
And speaking of those companies you speak of, New Japan, you got obviously AEW, Ring of Honor, you name the list of all these different organizations that are not WWE or affiliated with WWE. And they're keeping their superstars on the payroll, even though they're not really wrestling. They're not really making money really right now. They're kind of breaking even almost, or losing money. But WWE has reportedly $500 million in reserve. Yeah, it's not a good look for Vince and WWE. And like we were talking about over text the last couple of days, XFL. I mean, I think that plays a pretty big role in these people getting released.
I think, and I said it earlier today when I was doing a phone interview with ESPN Radio in Syracuse, is that Vince McMahon has this griminess about him from the 80s and the 90s, obviously with the steroid scandals and other wrestlers, whether it comes to prostitution, drug abuse. But the last 10 years or so, Vince McMahon has been a little clean of that. One, because he's stayed out of the spotlight, Triple H and Stephanie been more in it. The TV PG product has definitely helped things. People look at WWE a lot different than they looked at it, let's say, in 1991. Obviously, we just saw Dark Side of the Ring this past week. I watched it the other day. Jimmy Snuka, still on the hook for, did he kill his girlfriend? Did he not kill his girlfriend? Did WWE and Vince McMahon help cover that up at all? But Vince McMahon, for the most part, with the XFL, he's been a lot better for the last 10 years since his last incarnation of the XFL. But stuff like this, he's just had a horrible, horrible week, whether it's, his tie-ins with Donald Trump, the fact that he lied about the financial situation he had with the XFL, both WWE being a part. And he also said, him and Oliver Luck, that there would be no issues when it comes to finances for the first season, so that they had enough money to cover the first season. Well, apparently not, because they're filing for bankruptcy, and they're trying to get people to pay Bob Stoops and some of these other people in the XFL. I thought you had the money to pay these people if anything happened, and that apparently seems like a lie.
Yeah, it was overall. It's just a bad look for Vince across the board. It's the whole thing with Trump too. How the performance center is considered essential. I've read a lot on social media. They're getting a lot of heat for that as well. But I also have seen that Vince and WWE can make a lot of money off of this, because you have Bob Arum, who's one of the top boxing promoters in the game. He's actually reaching out to WWE and seeing if they can use the facilities for a show. So they're going to figure out a way to come out smelling like roses, or at least make a few bucks. That's what Vince does. $500 million reporting in the slush money, and you're cutting people. It's not good timing. You should have kept them on. And the thing was, a guy like Drake Maverick, who I saw his video on social media yesterday, very sad. The day before.
Yeah, he's not released. I don't follow social media. I just watch the programming. Isn't he still in the Cruiserweight tournament?
Yeah, here's the thing. In his little 2-minute, I know. His 2-minute interview, he's like, I'm still going to perform, because obviously this stuff's been taped ahead of time. We all know that.
And that's another bad look that all this has because of that. The fact that you have performers that you, in one aspect, are releasing while you're at the same time promoting them to wrestle on television at the same time.
Here's the other thing, too. I'm thinking, because I went back and watched Monday Night Raw. I finished it today. And you get Sarah Logan, and you have No Way Jose, who also got released. Those two individuals got squashed. So I think those decisions were already kind of made ahead of time, and then they were just announced yesterday. So it's, to me, if you're going to squash somebody, I wouldn't have thought of it this way, but it's like, man, they're probably going to get caught, because why would WWE have them go out on a good note? You know what I mean? That's what WWE does. Like the whole Dean Ambrose thing, they didn't make him look that good going out. Why would you do that? It's going to make someone else more money.
And one of the things I was saying about Vince McMahon not really looking good is we've always complained about the fact that there is no off-season in WWE. And I'm not one of these people that ever really, I know when it comes to college athletes, people love to stick up for them and, use terms like indentured servants and say things like they're being, they're taken advantage of. And with WWE, I haven't really gone that far, but I feel like in some aspects I wanted to because they have them work all year round. And many fans of WWE and pro wrestling have advocated for some sort of off-season. And in a time when Vince McMahon doesn't even really need to do anything, it's just natural that there's an off season because there's a pandemic going on. The fact that even in a situation like this, I really have something to say to all the people out there who think that Vince McMahon is just giving us entertainment because that's what we need in a time like this. I mean, yes, he is giving us entertainment, and WWE is giving us entertainment, but I think that's probably one of the lower priorities on his list. I think continuing to make revenue is higher than the fact that he's giving us entertainment. I don't think this is a humanitarian effort from Vince McMahon. I don't think putting all these wrestlers out there is something that, they're volunteering to do. And that's what I kind of hate about this the most is we want a WWE offseason when nothing's going on. And now there's like this stuff going on in the world. And you thought, well, maybe September 11th was an outlier. Maybe the Owen Hart thing where he didn't stop the show. Maybe, they just didn't know what to do. No, it seems like it's if somebody else died in the ring, I'm going to assume the show's going to go on because from what we're seeing is this is a Vince McMahon staple. This isn't just happened to be we're caught in the middle of a pay-per-view. What do we do? No, because now you have a perfect out clause to put a pause on some programming, and you still won't do it.
And here's the thing. Add to that. The Dark Side of the Ring with the Chris Benoit Part 1 and Part 2. Chris Benoit, obviously it came out afterwards that he murdered his family and then killed himself. They praised him on Monday Night Raw, and like literally hours after they found out he was passed away. They praised him, and I go back and I watched it, and Chavo Guerrero really said some things. And he's like, "Crap, I put my foot in my mouth. I didn't know."
Well, with that Monday Night Raw, I'll actually give Vince McMahon some sort of credit because while they still had a Monday Night Raw, it was a Chris Benoit tribute show. They, at that time, actually canceled the live audience, which is something that we're kind of seeing right now that it was pretty surprising that they did that and didn't just make the show go on like they did with Owen Hart, like they did with Eddie Guerrero. I mean, the show actually went on. They still took ticket sales. They still sold merchandise. They still made everyone show up to work that day. So I guess give them some credit for Chris Benoit because they actually let everyone have the day off.
But in a sense, though, he did drop the ball because
he didn't
praising him, and then like 30 hours later they find out, oh crap, yeah.
Well, that's not. I don't put that one on Vince because you don't know. You're just you at that time you're going with what you know. And the next night he obviously said what he said on ECW, and then there was no mention of Chris Benoit after that. But I think it just stinks that there is so many out clauses. But one of the main reasons I think people are saying that Vince doesn't want to quit right now is because of the Fox deal, and that's why he's kind of getting more flack lately because he's bringing talent back in to start doing live wrestling versus the pre-tape stuff because he's only allowed to do so much pre-tape stuff on the Fox network per year. I think it's a Christmas episode and one other time. So he has to give them so much live product or Fox can get out of that deal. And that's not just making money now, but obviously if Fox backed out of that deal, I mean, that's going to be a long-term effect of some money that they would lose out on.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Fox can pull the plug. I mean, they can pull the plug any time. I mean, the ratings across the board really haven't been that good. I mean, I've been going back and using my DVR, and I'll be honest with you, the last two shows I watch every week are Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. I watch NXT and I watch Dynamite before I even touch the other shows because I just think they're awful. I mean, I fast forward out of it. It's awful.
But WWE is trying to still make sure that they do what they need to do to satisfy that Fox requirement because, I mean, let's face it, when Fox bought this, SmackDown, I won't say it was at an all-time high. It's probably at an all-time high in like 1999. But it was at a pretty good high moving over to Tuesday nights being live with Shane McMahon. The ratings were starting to compete pretty heavy with Monday Night Raw when Fox decided to put all this money into SmackDown. And then about a year and a half later when Fox actually got SmackDown was on the decline. So Fox might be, and that was also a year and a half ago in the way technology changes in a year and a half. Being on network television versus being on cable television, being on an app, things change so sporadically that maybe Fox might be regretting that deal a little bit, and Vince McMahon doesn't want any reason for them to go out on this deal. So even if he has to drive them in from out of state and perform live in a pandemic, he will do that so that they don't back out on this deal.
For sure. I mean, Vince is, and I'll give Vince credit for one particular thing. He's a hell of a businessman. So I mean, I can't give him too much crap for that part of it. And you're right. He's doing everything he can to make sure Fox doesn't pack their bag and say, yeah, sorry, this isn't going to work out. We're out. You know what I mean? So it's Vince is kind of in a no-win situation too. But you know how he is. If he could work every day, he would work every day. And if you watch when you watch the Dark Side of the Ring, I don't know if it was the Benoit episode. It might have been maybe the New Jack. It was one of those episodes where they were talking about Vince. Like Vince doesn't do anything else. Like does Vince like have any fun activities? Like this is his life.
Yeah, I think it might have been the one with Russo and the Brawl for All.
That's probably what it was. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to touch on that really quick. Speaking of that, you know me. We talked via text. You know through the last few weeks. I'm not a Russo guy, and I contradict myself because I am an Attitude Era fan. I love the Attitude Era. I just don't like Russo. And looking back, I'm like, man, some of the stuff he did was stupid. Like the Brawl for All, that was dumb. That ruined a guy's career. I'm a Cornette guy through and through, except for when he makes those really off-color comments, which he tends to do every so often. His mindset's good. I love his mindset on certain things, but what he did on Power, not so good. But overall, I think Cornette's vision of wrestling is something I align with more than Russo's Jerry Springer style of WWE or WWF.
You know, I think at the time Russo's approach to the WWE was a good approach. We're lucky as WWE fans that he had the approach he had in WWE. While the Brawl for All was a fail, the things he did in WCW really were god awful, and I think it was past that time. I think that's the thing. Vince Russo was good right at the time he was there. I think Vince Russo now as a writer probably wouldn't be the best. I don't think Jim Cornette, I think probably he'd be a better writer now than he was then, because that is, without the Attitude Era, I mean, Jim Cornette was a main staple in like 94, 95. You know, when things were pretty stale in WWE. I've actually been going through and watching all the In Your House pay-per-views in order, and starting from 1995, and you can definitely see a huge difference between, you know, Jim Cornette touch stuff, you know, the Doc Hendricks days as a backstage reporter, as Doc Hendricks, not Michael Hayes, and that kind of new generation WWF versus the Attitude Era. And yeah, there's a lot of follies for the Brawl for All, but I mean, you got to give, I don't necessarily say, you definitely have to give them credit for getting WWE to where they were. And then you got to give him credit for helping WWE, because when he went to WCW, it's like he helped WWE get there, and then he went to WCW and pretty much sabotaged them. So yeah. He's a WWE guy through and through.
I wish in some capacity, I mean, obviously this is never going to happen where Cornette and Russo can be in the same room and work together, because that will never happen. We all know that. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, kind of taking what you're saying about
like a mix of the two. You want that Attitude Era and that professional wrestling. You want that reason for people to care. I think that's the big thing that I liked about Russo, as he always mentioned, that you want people to care. And I was actually listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago when I was making a long drive back from North Carolina, and one of the former writers, Mike McCarthy, said from WWE is that they asked Triple H, what do fans want the most in like year 2008, 2009? And a lot of the writers were saying fans want to be a part of the show. And he was very much saying, no, I don't want fans to be a part of the show, and I don't think fans want to be a part of the show. What they want is simply what they've always wanted, and that's to care. And I have to agree with that. I mean, yes, being a part of the show is cool here and there. They did the Taboo Tuesdays and the Cyber Sundays. But I would take having a real feud that you care about much higher than those. Something that you really care how this outcome goes. You know, the good Rock versus Austin WrestleMania 17. You really wanted to know the results of that kind of thing. Michaels versus Bret Hart in that Iron Man match. You know, you build it up for as long as you did. I would take those over, you know, being able to text in which kind of match happens.
I remember those too. That was an interesting time. Those Cyber Sunday type stuff. It was different. It fell flat. I mean, do you remember Sunday Night Heat and Velocity? Remember those? I remember watching Sunday Night Heat and not being able to watch the pay-per-view because I didn't want to pay $40 or whatever it was at the time. I always watched Sunday Night Heat. Did you watch Sunday Night Heat?
Oh, I mean, Sunday Night I watch before every pay-per-view, and even if I didn't, I used it as like fodder to try to get somebody to buy me the pay-per-view, because Sunday Night Heat was the greatest. It's better than any of the kickoff shows now. People don't realize back in the day, you know, Sunday Night Heat was on pay-per-view Sundays. That was a good kickoff show to pay-per-views, because it really felt, like first off, it was on television versus the WWE Network. Now the kickoff shows don't matter because we're already watching the pay-per-view. But back then, you didn't know if you're going to buy the pay-per-view or if your friend was going to be able to get their family to buy the pay-per-view. So you turn on Sunday Night Heat to get a glimpse of what the stage looked like, to get some of the pre-interviews. A lot of stuff happens sometimes on Sunday Night Heat that would lead to the pay-per-view. I mean, like Stone Cold attacked in the back or something like that. I feel like they did a lot more with that than they do now in the kickoff shows. I feel the kickoff shows don't really touch on the main show now.
Yeah, I mean, the kickoff shows are garbage nowadays. I agree. Sunday Night Heat was fun. When I wasn't able to watch those pay-per-views back in the day, Sunday Night Heat was like, all right, the same thing. Like, I just wanted to get a feel for the pay-per-view and how things were going leading up to the actual main card, I guess. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Stone Cold, watching a lot of Stone Cold stuff going on back then was fun. There were some good matches overall. But so, I mean, Velocity, different story.
Velocity is the same as any of these pre-taped main events, superstars. I think it was kind of cool at first just because it was on cable television and it was on like in prime time on a Saturday night versus like main event, which is like on a Saturday morning or, on like the PAX network or some, Ion network or something like that. But, I think what helped Velocity is the fact that it was on at a reasonable time so they could have, at least at first, they had some pretty decent matches. But then they actually had Confidential on after that, which was, at the time, a huge show. This is before the WWE Network and all the fourth wall breaking. Confidential was huge for its time with me and Gene talking, to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels for the first time since '97, going to people's houses and seeing, how they live off, TV. So Confidential was a show I couldn't miss. So I'd say Velocity was all right because it led into that.
It served a purpose, but it wasn't a good purpose. I never cared for it. It was just one of those things. I didn't even watch it back in those days, really. I watched a little bit, and then I just got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. Let me ask you this. I mean, the Money in the Bank stuff going on right now. Are you happy with how things are going right now with these matches for the men's and women's, or what are your thoughts?
I guess my thing is it's still just I'm just kind of curious, is this going to be the new thing going forward? Because if this is the new thing going forward, I think Money in the Bank, if I make it to Money in the Bank, might be the time where I have to take a pause from WWE if they're not going to take a pause. Because watching these matches in this empty arena is just tough, and it's hard to tell the difference between a pay-per-view. Is Money in the Bank going to be pre-taped? Is Money in the Bank going to be live? Are they going to pre-tape that? I mean, how is it? I feel like, how is it going to feel like with a ladder match in the sense of the ceilings being so low? We saw that at WrestleMania. And of all the people to do this empty arena stuff, WWE seems to be doing it worse. And I even am talking about their subsidiary, NXT. Why aren't they doing it at least at Full Sail University? When I watch NXT, that even looks better. I don't know if it's just the way that they dark out the walls. You can't really see the ceiling. It has that more intimate feel. Same with AEW this past week. They have like the wrestlers ringside. I mean, WrestleMania, people say, WrestleMania was in front of no crowd. But that's not the case. It wasn't, in my eyes, that wasn't WrestleMania. Because in real sports, like the Final Four, the Super Bowl, those can be in front of no crowds because there's still a legitimate championship to be had. There's still something. There's still a difference between the Super Bowl and two teams playing, and that's a championship is at stake. WrestleMania, the difference between that and Elimination Chamber or any of the other in-your-house pay-per-views is all the other pomp and circumstance. Why is that WrestleMania? Well, it's Brock Lesnar's defending the belt just like he did at SummerSlam, but the difference is he's doing it on this grand stage. So without the grand stage, Monday Night Raw, WrestleMania, they all look the same to me. There's really there's no difference between Raw and WrestleMania other than those pre-produced matches.
With WrestleMania, kind of hitting on that a little bit, what did you think overall? I know we texted a little bit about it. I mean, I thought it was decent for what it was. I mean, I thought it was. I gave it a 5 out of 10. I mean, that doesn't sound like a great score, but considering the circumstances, I thought the Taker match was good. The Funhouse was good. There's a couple other matches in there that were decent. I didn't think it was as terrible as people thought it'd be, and the ratings were good.
Yeah, It really stinks, I guess. I mean, this is just my personal opinion when it comes to WrestleMania. I know a lot of people enjoyed it. I know some people didn't like it. What I personally don't like about WrestleMania was the fact that it had all the eyeballs on it, and it was this. I literally was watching it with some family members that don't ever watch wrestling. And normally, if that's ever the case, I try to show them WrestleMania. I try to put on WrestleMania, and it kind of opens their eyes to what they didn't realize. They didn't realize that wrestling was still so popular. They didn't realize that so many people still went to wrestling, that it was such a production, because they're just not familiar with it. They see Raw every week, and they just think, what's the difference? So I was watching it with family members who don't normally watch wrestling, and I actually had to turn WrestleMania off and put on a previous WrestleMania because I felt kind of embarrassed, because they're sitting there thinking, like, you fly across the country to watch this? And they said, no, I don't fly across country to watch this. I fly across country to watch, and then I showed them, like, WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. Like, it's not just that it was in front of, no crowd. If it was at Raymond James Stadium and they still did everything WrestleMania-wise just in front of no crowd, I think that would have been better. I mean, it didn't have any WrestleMania elements. There was no surprise guest. There was no, Rob Gronkowski, I guess, but there was no Hulk Hogan introduction. There was no, celebrity. There was nobody, bands singing somebody to the ring. I thought before it happened that there would be, especially with the pre-taped version. I thought we would see some surprises. I thought we'd see, a band sing or something. And even if it's not at the same location, kind of like the pre-production style, maybe like a music video spliced with, Edge coming to the ring while Alter Bridge at another location is performing live, and kind of spliced the two together like NWO entrance style, where you show a video here and then a video there. Or maybe shoot off fireworks from an undisclosed location, like a drone shot of fireworks going off over the city of Orlando as Drew McIntyre wins the belt. But none of that. They did none of that.
But I will say this, though. The Funhouse and then the Taker, the Boneyard match, those two matches, to show to your family, it would have been the matches to show them, because I thought it was very cinema-like. It was almost like
no, those were the best. Those were the best. Obviously, a lot of people are saying they want to see more of that. I hope we don't have to see more of that, because I hope we're back seeing wrestling. Or maybe a mix of that. I'm not a fan of that House of Horrors match back in the day, but that House of Horrors match at least had that element and then ended in the ring for the live crowd as well. So, I wouldn't mind seeing maybe a match like that again, but maybe seeing it, end in the ring with fans in attendance.
Yeah, I would say this. For Taker, I thought it was one of Taker's better matches in a long time, to be completely honest with you. I think with Taker in his state where he's in his 50s now, he's towards the real end of his career, we think. These are the kind of matches that I think would be perfect for him, because you're not showing his flaws, you're not showing that he can't really go anymore. I thought it was good because there was enough other elements outside of it to make it pretty good, and him and AJ Styles in the match too kind of helped too as well.
So we'll end the show obviously the way we started the show, and that's talking about what happened today. Howard Finkel, the WWE's first employee, dead at 59, just about a month before his 60th, dead at 69, a month before his 70th birthday. Howard Finkel, I was talking earlier today with some people and saying, he's the voice of WWE, because a lot of people always put that moniker on a commentator. But in wrestling or any combat sports, the real voice is the person who is being able to project their voice not to those just at home, but to those in the arena as well. Michael Cole and JR, they're big voices in WWE, but if you're at an event, you don't hear them. But Howard Finkel or Bruce Buffer, those people are staples to those watching at home and those in attendance.
For sure.
What about Howard Finkel? What will you remember most about him?
I honestly, I posted out on Facebook earlier today, after hearing about his passing, he was the voice of my childhood as a wrestling fan, and I was showing my wife, I was like, Howard Finkel passed away. She's like, who's that? So I played her this clip, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's been all over social media. I remember watching it, where I believe it was Del Rio versus CM Punk, and CM Punk had his own special ring announcer, Howard Finkel. And
I remember this.
As soon as his voice hit, my wife's like, oh my God, I remember him from the 90s. I'm like, as soon as you hear his voice is so recognizable. Even a casual fan like my wife and other friends of mine and family of mine, they would be like, the Fink, yeah, I know the Fink. That guy's awesome. It's a sad day for WWE after yesterday was a tough day as well. So it's back-to-back tough days for the wrestling business, and obviously thoughts and prayers go out to his family, of course.
Yeah, Howard Finkel. His voice was on video games. His voice was on everything WWE related. It's kind of strange because he did take a lot of time off. If you watch some WWE or WWF in like the 90s. He kind of took some time off here and there, but he was always around. I think where he'll be missed the most and where it kind of was unfair is that there was no WrestleMania. And the one thing that he's been doing recently is he's been the voice of the Hall of Famers when they come out at WrestleMania and they get introduced in front of the crowd. So I'd assume that he would have probably been there this year in Tampa, Florida, announcing all the Hall of Famers, in front of the live crowd at Tampa, but that didn't happen. So it just stinks that he couldn't go out, one final time, but, everybody's time does come to an end, and he had a very important purpose in WWE, as Stephanie McMahon put out, the first ever employee of Vincent Kennedy McMahon's World Wrestling Federation.
Very sad.
So that's going to do it for this week's edition of the show. Hopefully we'll be back next week to do it all over again. We'll talk some more stuff in the world of wrestling. Even that, not just the TV shows themselves, but there's just so much going on when it comes to these Dark Side of the Ring episodes, things going on outside of WWE, when it comes to politics, the coronavirus, so much more. The XFL, obviously. We'll be here to talk about it next week. For Brandon Clement, you can find him on Twitter at Icebreaker21. You can find me at KRockJared. Make sure, if you're listening to the show on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or on any other of our podcast formats, we thank you. And if you're watching the show, remind you that you can listen on any of those formats in case you're in the car or any place like that. So Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else you get your podcast, and always on YouTube. It's been the Heel the Face podcast. Brandon, it's been fun.
Yeah, man, loved it. I'll talk to you soon.
Right.